State of Cannabis.
This is the State of Cannabis News Digest, a roundup of this week's key developments in the cannabis industry.
Happy New Year and happy holidays to everyone listening. You're listening to our weekly cannabis and hemp policy podcast, published every Saturday morning. If you're finding us for the first time, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. As we begin 2026, cannabis and hemp policy across the country is tightening, fragmenting, and being tested at the State House, at the ballot box, and at the checkout counter. We're seeing stricter enforcement, new taxes, regulatory rewrites, and voter pushback all happening at the same time.
And now here is the deeper look at the key events in the cannabis world this week.
Alabama is starting the new year with much tighter rules around consumable hemp products. Beginning January 1st, more provisions of House Bill 445 take effect, placing hemp-derived THC products, including gummies, beverages, and other consumables, under a new licensing system overseen by the Alabama Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. Only licensed retailers can sell these products, and sales are restricted to adults 21 and older. The law also sets detailed limits on THC content and packaging. Edibles and beverages are capped at 10 milligrams of total THC per serving. Beverages can be no larger than 12 fluid ounces, with no more than 4 containers per carton. Edibles must be individually wrapped, and cartons can't exceed 40 milligrams of total THC total. Other consumable hemp products, like topicals or sublinguals, are also capped at 40 milligrams. Alcohol is banned in these products, except as a flavoring agent, and manufacturers are barred from including intoxicating compounds beyond cannabinoids. Enforcement is a major feature of the law. Products sold illegally are treated as contraband and can be seized without a warrant. Retailers must keep certificates of analysis on hand and provide them immediately upon request. Penalties escalate quickly, starting with a $5,000 civil fine and rising to a Class C felony and loss of a business license for repeat violations. Alabama's approach sets a strict tone, and other states are also tightening hemp rules, though not always with the same clarity.
In Tennessee, hemp businesses are entering 2026 facing major regulatory changes and lingering uncertainty about when enforcement will fully arrive. Oversight of hemp products shifts to the Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission starting January 1st, while licensing remains with the Department of Agriculture through the end of the year. A major focus is THCA, particularly in smokable products like flower and vapes. The state's updated approach clarifies that THCA is a hemp-derived cannabinoid, but also sets limits that would make many existing THCA products illegal. Some retailers say June 30th is when those products would effectively be banned, while statewide reporting suggests parts of the rollout originally planned for January may be delayed until at least July. On top of state changes, businesses are watching Washington closely. Congress recently passed a spending package that includes language redefining hemp, described as capping total THC at 0.4 milligrams per container. Industry representatives warn that change could affect far more than smokable products, potentially reaching most CBD items currently on shelves. For now, Tennessee businesses are preparing for significant shifts, even as the exact timeline remains unsettled.
Texas is also moving toward a major rewrite of its consumable hemp rules, and state health officials are now taking public comment. In late December, the Texas Department of State Health Services published proposed regulations following a governor's executive order signed in September and an emergency age restriction adopted in October. A public hearing is scheduled for January 9th. The proposal would set a statewide minimum age of 21 for hemp products, require ID verification, and expand consumer protection measures, including formal recall procedures, documentation of consumer complaints, and tracking of adverse effects. It also introduces stricter testing, record keeping, traceability, and packaging standards, including child-resistant and tamper-evident containers designed to be non-attractive to children. One of the most contested changes is the shift from a Delta-9 THC limit to a total THC standard, a move advocates say could remove hemp flower from the legal Texas market. The proposal also includes significant licensing fee increases, with state estimates projecting substantial new revenue alongside higher costs for businesses. The rules aren't final, and the next few weeks of public comment may determine what products remain legal and how much it costs to sell them.
As Texas considers major changes to how hemp and cannabis are regulated, one thing is clear: the policy decisions ahead won't happen in a vacuum. That's why lawmakers, physicians, researchers, and advocates from across the state are gathering for the Texas Cannabis Policy Conference, hosted by the Texas Cannabis Policy Center. The conference returns January 29th through 31st at the Thompson Conference Center on the University of Texas at Austin campus. This year's theme, Maintaining Momentum for Effective Cannabis Policy, focuses on what comes next for Texas, from medical access and public safety to regulation, research, and responsible innovation. It's a space built for serious discussion and evidence-based policy. No hype, just informed conversations about how cannabis law is actually taking shape. Registration is open now at texascannabisconference.org. Students attend free with registration. That's texascannabisconference.org, where Texas comes together to shape the future of responsible cannabis policy.
In Maine, cannabis consumers are seeing a change that's simpler and immediate. As of January 1st, the state's adult-use marijuana sales tax increased from 10% to 14%. Retailers say that translates to roughly a 4% increase in the final price, even if base product prices stay the same. The higher tax applies to all recreational cannabis sold at licensed dispensaries statewide. Maine's medical marijuana program is not affected, meaning qualified patients can still purchase cannabis without the adult-use sales tax. For consumers, the impact is direct. Legal cannabis now costs more.
Michigan's legal cannabis market also began 2026 with a new tax, but the stakes there are higher. Starting January 1st, the state implemented a 24% wholesale tax on marijuana, paid by retailers to distributors. Supporters say the tax is aimed at funding road repairs, with estimates of roughly $420 million in revenue. The timing has raised concerns within the industry. Market data show the average price of an ounce of recreational flower has fallen below $60, the lowest level since legalization. While consumers benefit from cheaper cannabis, businesses say margins are already thin in an oversupplied market. Some operators report layoffs and shorter work weeks, and at least one company has linked the tax to closing a grow facility. Retailers say price increases may take months to show up, since existing inventory wasn't taxed at the new rate. The tax is also facing a legal challenge. A judge declined to block it in December, and an appeal is now underway.
In Pennsylvania, legal marijuana is once again being framed as a budget issue. House Speaker Joanna McClinton says legalization could help fund priorities like education, transit, and infrastructure, arguing the state needs new revenue sources to plan for long-term costs. The Pennsylvania House passed a legalization bill earlier in 2025 that would have created a state-run cannabis store system, but the GOP-controlled Senate rejected it, leaving the issue unresolved heading into 2026. Some bipartisan lawmakers suggest recent federal marijuana rescheduling could give Republicans more political cover to support legalization. Still, Senate leaders remain skeptical about passing a bill this session. The revenue debate continues, with state officials disagreeing over how much legalization would actually bring in. For now, cannabis remains part of Pennsylvania's budget conversation, but not yet part of its law.
In Colorado, regulators are dealing with cannabis that's already reached consumers. On December 31st, the state issued a health and safety advisory and a voluntary recall for certain marijuana products produced by CC Brands doing business as Stash House CO. Additional testing found pesticide contamination above state limits. The recall includes medical and recreational concentrates used in vape cartridges and infused pre-rolled products. One batch initially passed mandatory testing, but later failed follow-up testing for chlorphenapyr. Other batches were recalled as a precaution after testing positive for another pesticide, fluopyram. Officials say the products were sold at nearly 300 licensed stores across Colorado between late February and mid-December of 2025. Consumers are urged to check labels and return or destroy affected products. Regulators say they haven't linked any illnesses to the products so far.
California is continuing to reshape its cannabis system, both through regulation and research. In late December, the Department of Cannabis Control released proposed updates to cultivation rules, including clearer harvest tracking requirements, more flexibility for moving immature plants between licensed sites, and the removal of some reporting obligations. At the same time, the proposal introduces minimum sanitation standards for businesses handling exposed cannabis, including equipment cleaning requirements and restrictions on animals in handling areas. The presence of illegal pesticides would be treated as evidence of unsanitary conditions, potentially affecting multiple sites under the same ownership. Separately, the state finalized nearly $30 million in new academic research grants funding 22 projects at public institutions. The studies examine everything from consumer behavior and health effects to environmental impacts, worker safety, and why unlicensed cannabis sales persist. All research will be made public, and with this round, California has now invested nearly $80 million in cannabis research since 2020.
Oklahoma is tightening oversight of its medical marijuana program as 2026 begins. Starting January 1st, doctors who recommend medical marijuana must complete an education course and register with the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. Physicians who don't comply can no longer recommend patients, and applications relying on them will be rejected. The state currently lists about 260 registered recommending physicians. Meanwhile, a separate law that took effect in November updates DUI-related rules. Marijuana consumption is now illegal in any vehicle, including by passengers. Cannabis must remain sealed and stored away, and having a medical card does not exempt drivers from DUI charges. Violations can result in misdemeanor charges and fines of up to $500.
In Arizona, cannabis laws could soon return to the ballot, but not in the way voters saw in 2020. A newly filed initiative called the Sensible Marijuana Policy Act would eliminate recreational marijuana sales while keeping personal possession, limited home cultivation, and the medical cannabis system intact. Supporters argue the commercial market has created problems ranging from youth exposure to environmental concerns. Opponents are expected to argue regulated sales replaced illicit markets and reflected voter intent. The measure would not recriminalize marijuana or undo expungements. Organizers must gather nearly 256,000 signatures by mid-2026, and if approved by voters, the changes would take effect in 2028.
Ohio may also see cannabis policy decided by voters. A group called Ohioans for Cannabis Choice has launched a referendum effort aimed at blocking parts of Senate Bill 56, a law signed in December that tightens rules around both marijuana and hemp. If the campaign gathers enough certified signatures, the law would be paused until voters weigh in during the November 2026 election. The law restricts intoxicating hemp products outside licensed marijuana dispensaries and tightens marijuana rules related to home cultivation and possession. Business reaction is mixed. Some hemp-related companies say sudden changes disrupt planning, while Ohio's licensed marijuana industry group supports the law as a public safety measure.
Florida's latest recreational marijuana ballot effort is facing a race against the clock and the courts. Smart and Safe Florida has filed a lawsuit challenging the state's invalidation of roughly 71,000 petition signatures, including signatures from voters labeled inactive and those collected by out-of-state petition gatherers. The campaign argues inactive voters are still registered and eligible, and that signatures collected while a federal injunction was in effect should count. As of now, the campaign has logged about 675,000 valid signatures and needs more than 880,000 by February 1st to qualify for the 2026 ballot. The effort is also facing a constitutional review by the Florida Supreme Court, with briefings scheduled in the coming weeks.
This was the State of Cannabis News Digest, available weekly. You can listen to us on all main podcast platforms. To make sure you don't miss out on the latest updates and in-depth analysis of the cannabis industry, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. By subscribing, you'll get notifications for each new episode, helping you stay informed and ahead in the ever-evolving cannabis market. Join us next Saturday for more insights. Until then, keep thriving and stay green.